Hey!
This is JJ and Alex.
I made a name for myself. I told you I won't be denied.
As you wrap up your day, it's time to get your fix of the teams you live for and the sports you love. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody. Welcome on in. It's another edition of JJ and Alex right here, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Happy Sports Day. Happy Tuesday. JJ, good to be back in the studio. Everything
back in the saddle.
Yeah, everything looks like it did before.
Safe travels. How's St. George?
It was actually way. So that rain and crud that we got here yesterday.
Yeah.
Didn't happen down there until late. And so, like, when we were driving up is when we started to get hit with it. But, man, the whole state felt like it was, you drive up from there, man, we got killed with rain, which I love. I love it. I still have yet to turn on my sprinklers. I have neighbors who are turning on sprinklers right now.
That's good.
Nah, it's not me. I'm like, let's keep it as long as possible. And it's less about, like, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble here. It's less about the environment and all that stuff for me. Like, I'm not trying to, like, I'm not trying to do my part with that. I
dump my motor oil in the river.
I just don't want to fiddle with the sprinklers yet. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Go out there.
Nobody does.
Replace a head or two on there.
Look, I'm yard guy, but the thing I hate the most is sprinklers.
No, and you start digging them up.
Yeah,
and you're going,
I
can't do it.
I had a lot of problems this spring. I'm still working on some stuff, and I just hate sprinklers, man.
So when we turned on, we have secondary water.
So do we,
right?
But I don't have enough pressure right now, so I can't use it.
Oh, see, so we have everything's dialed up, but I'm last year when we turned it on, or when the secondary water turned on, I had a valve open that I didn't know was open on another part of the house, and we flooded part of our basement. Okay,
I did the same thing.
Yes. So
I had a slow leak in mine, and I had gallons of water in my basement.
What's that sound? Sounds like rushing waters, and they're like, "Yep, into your basement."
I've been there, done that.
Anyway, bottom line is,
let's talk about these problems.
I know these are, but you know what? This is what we do as dads. You know what I mean? You take on these battles on your own a lot of times, right? You're out there, you're digging in the stuff, and my wife's like, "Have the boys go out there so they can learn how to do this." I'm like, they won't learn a thing. They don't.
They won't.
They just don't. They don't pay attention. I remember my dad making me get under our Suburban. As a kid, my mom's like, "Hey, go out there. Your dad's changing the starter." By the way, when was the last time you changed a starter on a car? It just doesn't. Well, maybe you do. Maybe that's your thing.
No, that's not. I pay someone to do that. No,
I know this. I got under. I remember getting under the car and just being like, "What am I doing right now?" And if they would have had cell phones back then, I would have been under the car on my cell phone. I guarantee it, because I didn't pay attention to what my dad was doing. I was like, "Okay, see this over here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess, whatever." And then now you look back and you go, "Shoot." Now they make it now to where cars, they're like, please don't try to change your own starter. Just buy a whole new car.
Absolutely.
From us at the Chevy dealership.
That's right.
So there you go. We got tons to go on the program today. It's a Tuesday. We have we've got Eastern Conference Finals firing up tonight. JJ, that's awesome.
It's time. That's awesome. I think it's going to be good. We'll get into it, but I think that's going to be an interesting series. People think the Celtics are just going to absolutely trounce the Pacers.
Right.
Not so fast.
Not so fast. But if you learned anything from the last round, whatever your predictions are need to go out the window.
Yep.
Because we have no idea how this thing is going to roll out. And that's what makes it fun. And I hope that the Celtics don't have an easy path to the NBA Finals. I want
drama.
I want as many Game 7s as possible.
I want chaos.
Come on. In a word, chaos. Let's jump in, though. Our program is brought to you by G2G Bars, all natural ingredients and no preservatives. Make the G2G Bar perfect for anybody who needs a quick, tasty, and nutritious boost. Let's jump in, though. Let's get into it. Some college football, some NIL drama. So many things to discuss. Let's get into it right here with The Cut.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This portion of the show brought to you by Trajan Wealth. TRAJAN Wealth.com is the website. That's TrajanWealth.com for your retirement. All right, so Let's get into it. When Jaden Rashada was initially rolled out, when this 5-star kid was in high school and everybody was battling over him primarily.
BYU was pretty seriously pursuing him, right? If I remember.
Is that for real? I thought it was just Florida teams who were in the mix. But the bottom line was maybe it was after he left and Arizona State was in the conversation. I didn't know that BYU may have been in the conversation at the very beginning of all of it. But
early on, obviously they didn't. It didn't happen. So they got a commitment from his brother, and so they were in the mix because of that. But then his brother ended up decommitting. Anyway, it's a long story. It's not really important, but.
I think BYU fell out of the running because they weren't able to throw down the amount of money NIL wise.
Apparently not.
And they weren't going like this is a bad this is a bad thing to get into. Miami, Florida, all these teams down in the state of Florida fighting over Jaden Rashada.
Arizona State, now Georgia. I mean, this kid's been all over the map. He's been
all over the place. So initially it was Florida and Billy Napier, right?
Yeah.
And boy, talk about a program that needed a resurrecting, and apparently they resorted to throwing down what would have been. You remember when we heard the numbers initially? This was pretty early on in the trying to figure out how much you guys were getting process, and we still don't know very much. But you remember when we'd hear the numbers? I remember hearing 3. I remember hearing 7. I remember hearing 9.
You were all over the map.
And then somebody did get into the teens in the millions with Jaden Rashada, and we were like, well, this has to be fake. And it turns out it may have been too good to be true, certainly for Jaden Rashada, who ended up going to Arizona State because the Florida deal fell through. Now he's pursuing the university and Billy Napier personally because, and here's what really gets into it, JJ, is that when you offer a kid and these offers are there, I would assume that there could be probably a way to find out that these weren't just like handshake deals. Did you see that the Messi contract, the initial part of the Messi contract to Barcelona when he was in Spain was written out on a napkin?
Really?
And it was signed by him, and it was just kind of a little bit more of a handshake deal. That napkin itself just went for like $4 million or something like that at auction, or just under $1 million or something like that. But I would assume that we have something like that. And Jaden Rashada, I don't know if he has a case. But what we do know is that college football is in a really, really weird spot. First of all, there are teams and boosters that are able to offer $13.85 million plus.
Are they?
I don't know, but these collectives, and I would assume these collectives in some places, you know how it is. I bet there's almost a blank check situation at a couple of these universities.
I mean, look at like Oklahoma with their boosters.
Right.
You go around the country. I'm sure Alabama's at that point.
Texas has got to be there.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's some schools around the country where they have some boosters who are willing to pay anything if it's the right player.
Right.
And Jaden Rashada for Florida apparently was the right player, but you start looking at these numbers.
Insane.
And they are insane. Yes, he was a very highly touted player. As I mentioned, BYU was on him early because they were recruiting his brother, and they thought they had a chance early on. But then everything blew up because he was a really good player in Pittsburgh, California, and then he ended up at IMG Academy in Florida once his recruiting really took off. But anyway, he was initially committed to the Miami Hurricanes, and the lawsuit states that Rashada had a $9.5 million NIL promise with Miami. And he decommitted that November and then flipped to the Florida Gators and Coach Napier, and it's like, well, what happened there? Well, now we know. Somebody came up with 13.85 over 4 years. And so obviously he was going to go to Florida. And then when that broke apart, he ended up at Arizona State. Now he's at Georgia. But the numbers involved in the situation, and this is pretty, if you look back, in like 2022 was when things really started to blow up with these NIL things. And it was like, whoa, like the numbers were just crazy, right? And that's really when the numbers got big. And now it's just no big deal, right? You hear local quarterbacks getting $1.5 or $2 million. It's like, yeah, that's not really that big of a deal. But this was at the time a big deal. And now that we know the numbers, you're looking back on it, it's like, wow. But the bigger picture here for me, Alex, is two things. And we've talked about it quite a bit on this show with NIL. We don't know the consequences of this long term. And we're starting to see it. This is one of those consequences where a school or a collective or somebody, a booster, promises big money and then doesn't deliver. And that's what happened in this case. The deal fell through. He wanted to make the commitment, and it just all crumbled and fell apart. The other part of this, Alex, is what happens when these deals do go through? What if Rashada did take the 4-year, $13.85 million deal, but never wins the quarterback job?
Okay, so here's how that works according to what we know with NIL. Because the NCAA can't touch anything that's related to this except for when pay for play is in that discussion. Because these schools have to abide by this, by the name, image, likeness deal, which is that we're paying for you as that guy, not for anything else. We're not paying for you to win the starting quarterback job. We're paying for you because you are a big name, and you being out there for the school is beneficial for us. That's what they're paying for. And when a guy loses their job, that school loses out on the money. It's the equivalent of drafting a quarterback in the top 5 of the NFL draft and crossing your fingers that this is going to work out because you just shelled out a ton of signing bonus money. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that money's in the bank. You don't get it back. You don't say, well, we have a grievance here. This guy, he signed up to play. And in college, if you pay somebody and say, hey, and you'll get another payment once you were in the starting job, you can't do that. It's part of these rules. The NIL stuff it's the reason that the schools can't get involved and say, you can't do a deal with this, you can't do a deal with this company, you can't do it. Well, there are exceptions, right? Like there's alcohol companies, things like that. Your nicotine, your Zyn pouches or whatever. You can't do any
bourbon.
of that stuff.
You can't do bourbon ads.
And that's why in Kentucky I prefer, right. You can't do that. What they can do is basically anything under the sun, and these players are agents for themselves in some cases, or in other cases, as we've found out, they have their own agents. Sometimes they're easy to work with, sometimes they are not. Sometimes you can't even get to the player, by the way.
Yeah.
Because their agent goes, you're not important enough, we need this, and this is going to be the amount of money. I remember a specific player at Utah who was asking $1,000 a week for us to do an interview with him.
Yeah.
And when I say him, I mean his agent.
Right.
And the agent's like, hey, man. And I'm always like, and I remember having this conversation, and I remember just having my mind blown because I was like, we're having a conversation with this guy about this player to pay him to be able to make an appearance, right? This is a crazy thing. And then on top of it, to have them go, if you can't get to this level, we're not even having this discussion. I remember being in an airport. We were actually coming back from Pac-12 Media Days, all right? And I'm on the phone with this guy because it had just been rolled out, and we were like, let's move on this. Let's get some guys on. Let's have them start making some appearances. Let's do it. And you know what ended up happening? I remember getting a phone call from this guy, and he's like, you can't even get to my guy unless you can guarantee X amount of dollars. And I was like, I can't explain to you that I'm not trying to play hardball here. We do not have that. Like, we aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
We can't do it. But the reason that these players could do that, and by the way, the school's like this, don't talk to us. Like, we can't, we're not involved in making this stuff happen. So the school, Florida, isn't the one that's really on the hook. It's not the University of Florida. It's whatever the collective was, the orange and blue collective. It's Billy Napier personally. That's why you're seeing him sued on this, because he apparently put his name on the line and put money on the line.
How does he still have his job? It's
insane. It's really insane. Now, in Florida, you know how it is. He could make a dumb decision like this, and maybe he gets held accountable for it. But what ends up happening? No one cares if he wins. No one cares. If he's winning,
you're 100% right.
Who cares?
But guess what? He's not winning.
He's not winning. And so this is the kind of stuff that adds up pretty quickly. It's like, oh, you went 5-7 last year. We went 7-5. Not good enough for us. 8-4, by the way, is not good enough in Florida. 9-3 is like okay, but you better turn the corner and start getting to the SEC championship game. The reality is that guys like Jaden Rashada represent the earliest parts of NIL where mistakes were made and nobody knew how to handle it because it's unregulated, JJ. The only parts that are regulated on it are the pay-for-play part and the types of companies that you can get involved with. And in the end, selling the Florida boosters and suing Billy Napier might end up with nothing, because Billy Napier, is it him and his own $1 million that was on the line? Probably not. But he spoke for the booster, or he spoke for, this is all alleged, obviously. This is coming from, Rashada's lawyers. But who knows? I don't know what is going to end up coming from this. But this is where this type of litigation is the stuff that makes it to where, and it should have already happened, you've got to get a better wrangle on how to do this. And you have to be really careful, because you cannot limit the amount of money that these players can make on their name, image, and likeness, because that's decided by the school or by the boosters. If they decide that they're worth that money, then that's what the market bears for them. And I can't tell you how many times it will not pay off. And the reality is that what we're seeing now from this Toledo coach, right, which is fascinating too. This is the part that's crazy to me, is I don't know. I can't tell if it's genius or it's absolutely stupid. But Toledo's head basketball coach, Todd Kowalczyk, says, come play for me and we'll get you to the Big Ten in 2 years. That's their pitch.
Wow. You know what that is? That's a JUCO.
That's why
that's a junior
Jimbo
college.
Fisher yesterday goes, man, these Big 12 and former Pac-12 teams are basically glorified JUCOs. That's not true. But a MAC head coach in basketball saying, come get to the Big Ten in 2 years is a weird and kind of fascinating pitch. One, because in basketball, especially in college basketball, 2 years for a guy's actually pretty darn good if he's talented enough, right?
100%.
Come play for me, we'll get you to the Big Ten.
Does it get you to the NCAA tournament? Then you absolutely are okay with this.
And you know what the other thing is?
Look at Utah State last year.
Oh, yeah.
Not to interrupt, but I think that's exactly what happened. Is they brought in a bunch of guys. Nobody was returning, and Danny Sprinkle came from Montana State. Brought two guys with them. Actually, a couple more than three. More than that, I think there's three guys. But obviously, the ones you know is Great Osobor, and he obviously that paid off. And you know what? Does Utah State regret the whole Danny Sprinkle,
nope.
Great Osobor situation? Are you kidding me?
You're bummed that it only lasted 1 year.
They won their first NCAA tournament game in 23 years.
Right.
So of course you're going to do that. And if they say so long at the end of the year and they make $2 million a year at the Big Ten school, good for them. But you got that year out of it. It's better than not getting it at all. Right.
Did Great Osobor go to UW because just of the amazing relationship he has with Danny Sprinkle? Is that it? Or was it the $2 million we ended up finding out about that got him there?
Based on the picture he took and that he was posting on his social media, I think the $2 million was probably
probably a big incentive. Now, when you say come play for me, we'll get you to the Big Ten in 2 years. Let me translate it for you. Come play for me, and you'll get paid even more money when you go to the Big Ten in 2 years.
Yeah,
that's what happened with this. Imagine the recruiting strategies that you have now. Telling a kid, and this is why Billy Napier might end up getting in a lot of trouble, and the Florida booster might end up having to pay, or they'll lose this, in some sort of a settlement, is because according to Rashada and his team, he was told as soon as you sign this, then we're going to get you, some money in your bank account basically right now, that $1 million for you and your family, for your dad, right? And as soon as he signed it, that didn't happen. And then you're talking about because he gave up other deals to do it. That was the deal. It was you've limited the amount of money this kid can get with NIL, which is the biggest no-no in NIL, is limiting these kids to be able to
100%.
Be there, to utilize their name, image, and likeness. If a school wants to pay that much money, and if they have it, fine. I'm not going to try to babysit their NIL budget. And that's not the point here. The point was, because $13.85 million, I really don't know any. I couldn't tell you one player that's worth that much, even like your Caleb Williams's, your Dylan Gabriel's, whomever are the big names that are floating around in college football in last offseason and now this offseason. I can't imagine where $13.8 million would ever pay off for any player in college football, or that there'd be a guarantee with any of these guys. So these boosters, dumb as hell for doing these types of deals, and really dumb for backing out of them, if that's what ended up being the case. And these kids are not ready for this type of money anyway. But we can't judge that. They can't judge that.
Something has to happen, though, Alex. This can't continue because
What do they
I'm
do?
all for the kids getting whatever they can get. That's not what I'm about to say here. I am a big proponent of NIL and the student athletes' rights, and they need to stop being treated like second-class citizens in forced labor and actually be compensated for what they're giving these universities, because there's grown men and women who are cashing big on the efforts and the backs of these kids who are going to work every day as a student athlete. What I do think, though, has to happen is there does need to be some kind of a system in place. This has to be monitored. It has to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Regulated?
Regulated?
guess.
I guess just in some sense controlled so that it's not out of control. But I don't have the answer to that. I just know that something needs to be in place to make this work better, so that we don't have situations like this where a player sues his former school. This is going to get messy. There's going to be more lawsuits. There's not only going to be lawsuits from the player, there's going to be lawsuits from boosters and companies who paid players and didn't get what they thought they should have got out of it.
Right. Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
This is a big legal mess. And nobody wants that. I want these kids to get taken care of. I want them to get paid for what they're doing. I want them to be able to take advantage of their talents in this system. But there's got to be a real system in place, some protections, I guess, in essence, to protect both the players and those who are investing in the players.
Do you think that this is going to end up being like a landmark type of a court case? If it ends up going to court, if this could be one of the things that, because that's what ends up happening, right? Laws end up getting made after litigation breaks down to a point to where, there's a big court case that might decide it. You know what I mean?
I don't mind the courts getting involved. Once you get into the legislators getting involved in that, I don't want Congress involved in any of this. But as far as, judgments having to be passed, sure. I think that this is a deal. This lawsuit is going to be the first of what should be several or even many. And that's not good. It's going to get messy.
I just wonder what this is going to look like. Absolutely wild. Okay. We'll take the break here. We got more to go. Around the corner, stay right here, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
When TV and radio collide.
Love it.
Wow. This is what you get. You're listening to JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars.
Don't touch that dial.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome back. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Alex Keary, Jeremiah Jensen. It is a Tuesday. We're glad to have you along here with us. Let me see here. Eastern Conference Finals firing up tonight. Is it, in my mind, I'm trying to imagine if there is a quote-unquote super team in the playoffs still, or what the closest version in the NBA playoffs still, now that we have our conference finals set. Mavericks, Timberwolves on one side. I almost call them the Thunderwolves again because it's the best non-existent.
Is that a name for the hockey team here?
No.
You want to submit?
Hey, here's the problem. Wolves aren't native here. If it was in Wyoming, your home state, Thunderwolves.
Well, Thunderwolves are a mythic creature anyway.
I know.
So who cares?
Come on. I know. We're about to have Yeti. I'm all there. Yetis aren't native here.
Caribou's on the list. We don't have caribou.
I know. Just call them the reindeer. So I don't know between the Timberwolves and Mavericks and Boston and the Pacers. I know which ones aren't I know which one isn't a super team. The least considered a super team, right? It's the Pacers.
No doubt. But that might be the deepest team.
So Pacers, Celtics tonight. Are the Celtics a new version of a quote-unquote super team?
No. None of those guys were obtained in unrestricted free agency. None of them conspired to come together and play on the same team. They were drafted by the Celtics. They are homegrown talent. Superstars that have been with the Celtics their entire career. That's a great job by Danny Ainge of selecting that talent. Obviously, they added a Kristaps Porzingis in free agency.
Sure.
And at that point, you can start trying to make that argument. That's not really a super team. It's just they were able to make a trade for Porzingis. It wasn't even a free agent deal. So you look at the other teams. I think the closest team would probably be the Minnesota Timberwolves. But again, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns are drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Right, and
they played their entire career there.
If they bring in Rudy Gobert in free agency, they don't think to themselves, boy, now we got ourselves that superstar.
This isn't even fair. That's like when the Warriors got Kevin Durant.
You know how many shots have to be adjusted around him? It's amazing, right? That's not the kind of thing that ends up being a part.
No.
The super team, it is. It's a conspiracy. Super teams have to be conspired for. I think you made a phenomenal point. They have to be. There has to be some level of tampering that no one talks about, right? There has to be one leader, LeBron James, or Steph Curry, or whomever it might be.
Or the whole loophole that the Warriors were able to take advantage of to get Kevin Durant.
So, in the end, and I think a super team, yes, needs to be well over the league, soft cap that they have in the NBA, right? That's also part of the part of how you get called a super team.
The closest team to a super team is actually the Timberwolves because they have 4 guys who have played in All-Star games.
Yes.
And you'd be like, wow, it's the Mavericks because they've got Luka and Kyrie. Well, who else do they have? Oh, well, let me think. And then it takes you 5 minutes to come up with another name on the team. That's not a super team.
It's crazy to think that the Mavericks at the 5 seed and the Indiana Pacers at the 6 seed, I can't imagine that they have no chance just because of how the last round of the playoffs went.
Right.
Are the best teams in the playoffs right now? Absolutely, because they won their matchups. Say what you will about the Timberwolves, they beat the freaking Nuggets, and that by itself makes them they have to be considered the favorites in that one, right? Vegas has them considered the favorites, and you have to go through a different kind of refiner's fire to beat the world champs, who still have the same exact grouping of players that everybody deemed the best team by far over everybody before the season started, halfway through the season, even as the playoffs started up. Even as they were down 0-2 and then ended up winning 3 in a row, we just sort of went, there's your world champs. They know how to do their thing. Looks like a repeat. And that's obviously not how it went. So is there a shot that there could be an upset in the Eastern Conference Finals or in the Western Conference Finals, JJ?
Yeah, as far as upsets go, 100%. Like, why can't the Pacers? The Pacers just won a Game 7 on the road and did so in historic fashion. 67% shooting in that game at Madison Square Garden when the crowd was not on your side. So why can't they go into Boston? By the way, the Celtics have lost Game 2 in each of the 2 series they've played so far. What if the Pacers flip that and win home court advantage in Game 2? Why would that all of a sudden stop? That's been the trend for the Celtics. So absolutely the Celtics could lose that series. The Pacers could stun them. They need to take the Pacers serious. In the West, can the Mavericks beat the Timberwolves? Absolutely. Because I think we talked about this yesterday. We had a discussion about who the best player was in the NBA playoffs and who's the best player left. And I really wanted to go Jason Tatum and Ant, but then in the back of my mind I was like, well, you know what?
Yeah, but there's still Luka looming back there.
Luka is not 100% right now, but is he ever? And if you need somebody to take a shot in a clutch moment, Dallas has 2 of the most clutch players I've ever seen in my life.
And it would really be like, honestly, if you sat down with a GM in a war room, and knowing what we know about these guys now, what would the draft order be of the best players in the NBA right now?
Well, if you obviously want to factor in age, but I think your debate is between Luka and Ant.
Right, because Anthony Edwards is so dang young, too.
He's 22 years old, and he's doing this?
Might be one of the better players.
Luka's not that much older than that.
No, he's 20. He just turned 25, I think.
So, yeah. It really starts with those two.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 25 years old. That's correct.
Is that good news for the Jazz that this is the state of the NBA, that we haven't seen talent spread across the entire league like this in a long time? Or is it that the younger generation is now starting to become those superstars, and the superstars that you and I know are actually just old and busted old dudes who make a lot more money than they probably should?
It's good news and bad news. Here's the good news: is the top of the NBA has never been more wide open than this in my lifetime. I mean, you go back and you think, who was winning titles? Jordan won all the titles.
Multiples,
then it was Kobe, Shaq, and the Lakers.
Multiples.
Then it was Tim Duncan and the Spurs.
The
right?
Heat, the Spurs.
Then the Heat had to form a super team to take down the Spurs. And then you go. I mean, Dallas snuck one in there one year, but they had Dirk, who's an all-time player. The Celtics, same thing with Kevin Garnett. Danny Ainge pulled off that team and put that team together. Speaking of super teams, but ultimately there's been dynasties. And after the Spurs, you're really looking at after the Heat, then it was the Warriors, and there's always been that team that's been the bully. I can't name that team right now,
right,
which is exciting, and that opens everything up. Here's the negative. Here's the bad thing, Alex. The Jazz don't have any of those players right now that'll get you in this conversation. They don't have the roster right now. They don't have the roster of the Pacers. They don't have the superstars of the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. They don't have the continuity of the Celtics. They don't have those things. How do they get them? Well, you're going to have to get that through the draft. How many drafts? Well, I mean, like, if we were going to be really honest, like, I think like 2028 is probably around the time that this team would actually be interesting to watch.
So it was an interesting discussion.
Okay, we're going to have to sit around for 3 or 4 years until this team's interesting again?
Right. Okay, so the Jazz this year in the draft, this is a conversation I had with Jake and Ben on their show today. Jake, I think it was Jake that asked me, hey, what are the odds they use all 3 of their picks in the draft this year? And I said, I don't know, because we've been told it's a garbage draft, but at the same time, is there something going on there? Do you want all 3 of those picks? Is there a difference between 29 and 32? Is there a difference between 29 and 22? But
there's a big difference. You have a guaranteed contract to number 29. You don't to 32.
You don't to 32. But could you package 29 and 32 and get something a little bit earlier in the first round?
Or package them and just get out completely?
And do what? Add more
Why would
assets.
You want 3 rookies on top of the 3 rookies you got last year on this roster? How is that helping you move forward? Eventually, you got to start turning these assets into quality players that help you win games and help you get to the playoffs and help you contend.
Is there a version of, like, Keontae George wasn't like, world beater, crazy, I can't believe they picked him up. How did all these other teams pass up on him type of a guy? He was definitely very serviceable and could potentially be one of these great guys who ends up being part of the of this rebuild, right? Is there something like that at 16 somewhere? I'm not sure.
Not in this draft, no.
I know, but at the same time, guess what? They have the number 10 pick this year. At number 9, they took Taylor Hendricks last year, and we have no idea what the Jazz have with him still.
Right.
Don't have any idea.
Could be good, might not be.
I have no idea how that's going to work out.
There's some players in this draft that I like. I like Stephon Castle.
The Jazz apparently like him too.
Connect is interesting. They're not going to get any of those bigs. Reed Shepherd, I don't know if he's going to fall to 9. You're looking – Ron Holland is interesting. Ron Holland has some skills and Rob Dillingham. But you're looking at guys like Cody Williams, looking at bringing in a young wing that's played 1 year of college hoops, and you're like, I don't know, man. Like, is that helping you? Like, at some point, you gotta get somebody in here who's going to be a difference maker. And at number 10 in a whether who knows? We don't know what kind of draft it is, but it's obviously there's not a generational player available at 10. So that's a pipe dream. We all know that plenty of teams have hit it big and got lucky, and nailed Giannis in the middle of the rounds, or like the Jazz back in the day, got Karl Malone and John Stockton in the teens. I get that. But that's few and far between. The truth is, you look at most drafts, and 1 through 30, there's like 10 guys still playing in the league after 5 years, if that.
Good news is a lot of the good teams built these teams through the draft and then added a couple other key pieces later, right, when they kind of knew what they had. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We've got more to go. We will let's have a little bit of a would you rather around the corner, as we like to do this time of day every day. So we will come back. More to go on the program. You don't want to miss it. Stay here, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Listen, everybody. Real life hypotheticals to get your brain churning. As JJ and Alex ask, would you rather?
All right, everybody, welcome back. JJ and Alex, 97.5 KSL Sports Zone. Would you rather on the books here? Okay. Would you rather win a title with a thrown together luxury tax busting, superstar laden, doesn't care about Utah, just is here as hired guns sort of a situation? You win one title and then it all gets blown up. Or I can't guarantee you a title, but you have a successful team that you build from the ground up for 5 to 8 years.
I'm taking door number 2, and that might shock you because
no
the
guaranteed
first option,
title. No guaranteed title.
That's fine. You're telling me like you can have a title. So let's say the Jazz pieced together a team and they had won that bubble tournament, that bubble championship in 2020. How much would we celebrate that here? Because none of us would have been able to go there. None of us would have been able to celebrate it.
Oh, for sure.
So how much meaning would that have? And that's obviously a little different than what you're saying. I think a title is a title. Do the Toronto Raptors do they want to give their championship back because Kawhi was only there a year? Obviously not.
Right.
But there is a joy and a satisfaction out of seeing players your team drafts and develops and grows with and seeing them become champions and key members of your community and legends. The Celtics have a chance to do exactly what you're describing. Like if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown win a championship with that Celtics team, they're legends in Boston forever. And so, yeah, that I think, like for instance, another example, if Stockton and Malone were able to pull that off, just think how much. I mean, there's statues of them outside the arena across the street. Imagine what it would have been like if they actually won a title together.
Yeah, but hold up. Remember those Miami Marlins teams, or those back then they were the Florida Marlins.
Nobody in Florida cares. They don't. Those World Series mean nothing to sports fans in Florida.
It's crazy because they bought those titles, each one of those, by the way, especially the 97 one where they just immediately just blew that roster up, right? But they got there. It was wild. And they beat the freaking Yankees, by the way. Beat the Yankees to win the title. You know?
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that's you beat the Yankees. You were Yankees killers for 1 year. So if the Jazz were able to do that just 1 year, see, I think I go with the singular title. You know why? Because people would care here, and you know what it could turn into is that you follow that twice. They followed that formula twice. They won it in 1997. They won it in 2003. I think people in Florida don't care about those titles because people in Florida don't care that much about the Marlins in general. We care about the Jazz here, man. And you know what? When a Stanley Cup is raised here in Salt Lake, I kind of don't care how it gets raised, man.
That's fair.
I kind of don't care.
But isn't it something special when it's raised by somebody who's played here for 10 years, 15 years?
Yeah, I guess. All right. Joining us on the program right now, he cares about a Stanley Cup trophy being lifted here in the great state of Utah. Braden Chipman Roofing on the program here with us, one of the great sponsors also of the Utah Puck Report. They are hockey fans at Chipman Roofing, and Braden's nice enough to join us today. Braden, what's the number one thing people don't know about their roof? Like if somebody's looking around their roof just as like eyeballing it, would I be able to tell, other than just like a bunch of shingles being on the ground after a big storm, how am I really going to know if my roof is in good shape right now?
Well, if it's shiny or reflects the sun in any type or fashion, it's got a problem. And people are like, well, there's still asphalt up there. Well, really, it's a fiberglass mat, and it was worn out 5 years ago.
So they start seeing that asphalt kind of washing through their gutters too. That's kind of a tell too, right?
Correct. Yeah. They call that degranulation. And essentially the asphalt's coming off of the fiberglass weave on the shingle.
Sure.
It's worn out at that point.
I'm going to assume a good number of your jobs and repairs you do come from storm damage. I'm sure a lot of people listening right now that maybe they had storm damage this spring and they've got an issue, but they're hesitant to fix it. What can you tell them, and how can you help them with the damage, the insurance, all of it?
Just give us a call. Technology is really cool. We have systems, and products that we can purchase on their individual home. They'll give us a loss date, how high the wind actually was, if there was hail present. There's a lot of tools out there that we can help homeowners, provided they provided they actually have a problem, right? Provided their
Sure.
roof's actually damaged.
Well, if somebody's, listening to us right now and they go, okay, I've thought about it, we might be at that point. The benefit of calling Chipman Roofing today is $1,000 off new roofs this month. That's an awesome deal. There's the satisfaction guaranteed part. You guys do the free inspections. If it doesn't need a new roof, you guys aren't just going to say, hey, get a new roof because we're here. What is it that somebody can do to get a hold of you guys to make sure that they can get maybe on the books or at least get that free estimate?
Give us a call. The phone number 801-664-2906, or you can also text that phone number, and through our website you can leave your information, and we'll get right. Within 24 hours we'll have somebody over to you.
If you're one of those people that is hearing this and says, hey, you know what, I might need to get somebody to come look at it, a free estimate. Have them come out, have them inspect the home, see what the type of damages that may have happened in a storm or just that long-term wear on that roof. If you're like me and maybe you moved into a house and you're like, I don't even know how old this roof is, that might be something also that needs to be discussed with the folks at Chipman Roofing. Let me give out that phone number again, 801-664-2906. That's 801-664-2906, 801-664-2906. 2906. ChipmanRoofing.com. That's ChipmanRoofing.com. You can also text that number, 801-664-2906. Say, hey, I heard it on KSL. I want to get on the book, so I at least want to have somebody come out and look at it. Braden, thanks for hanging out with us, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Okay, there you go. ChipmanRoofing.com, 801-664-2906. Tell them you heard it right here on the KSL Sports Zone. Get that $1,000 off of a roof this month. All right, we'll come back. More to go around the corner. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.